Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Oops. Hold on. I don't have any, believe it or not, I don't have any additions or corrections to the agenda today. Can you believe that?
You can.
I did have one change I've thought about making, but I'm not going to. I was thinking about moving the next meeting's agenda to just before the executive session, but anyway, okay, public participation. I believe we have somebody who has something. Is there anybody besides Mr. Wartz who is from the public who would like to say something? Okay. Angie, I think that might be you. Is that you?
I just let Lisa in. I think as long as everybody mutes their mic.
Okay.
And is Daniel the only one who wants to make a public comment?
Okay, Daniel, you might have 5 minutes. It's currently 6:33.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I saw that restorative justice was on the agenda item, and I wanted to throw some thoughts out following the firing of Principal Riley on that matter to start. Some suggestions, perhaps, in a more heterodox perspective than you may be used to hearing. And I may start that by suggesting to not, as Chris Lord did in the October 14th board meeting, castigate approximately half of the entire country on the basis of their political affiliation under a provable falsehood that such affiliation was somehow directly connected to the devaluation of a specific race. I would also suggest that the school board not, as they unanimously did in their decision to fire Riley, take a critically deconstructed subjective interpretation of a statement made as the true meaning of the statement, independent of what the actual author of the statement truly intended it to mean, supported by that author's own background and life of actions. I'd ask that the board consider that safe spaces, cancel culture, microaggressions, and trigger warnings may just do more harm than good to all individuals. I'd like you to consider if creating a myriad of things as racist, sexist, or some or as a direct consequence of any of those isms, no matter the actual intention or severity, again, as you did in your decision against Riley, may create a cry wolf effect for occasions where there is actually a true racial, sexual, or other discriminatory-based problem, and make it more difficult to filter real and significant problems from pretended or exaggerated ones. I would add the consideration, more broadly speaking, that laser focusing on race in this instance, or any particular individual differentiating characteristic, as the single most important element of any part of life or interaction between people, and codifying that into the curriculum is quite the opposite of what leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King would have wished for. That what the board truly ought to be doing is teaching and codifying this in curriculum with the appropriate boards, true critical thinking skills, anti-fragility, that words are not inherently violence, that what does not kill you may in fact make you stronger, that your feelings should not necessarily always be trusted, that life is not by definition a battle between pure good and pure evil people, or as Ibram Kendi and similar anti-racism advocates assert, between racist people and anti-racist people, as if you can't just simply be not racist. Or that a person with a different ideological belief than you is not by definition a person that you can't associate with. And much more broadly, to consider turning around what, by a heterodox outsider perspective, is a growing systemic ideological indoctrination to postmodernist doctrines like critical race theory, selectively spotlighted intersectionality, or the categorically false and willfully dishonest idea taken as truism that America is an irredeemably, systemically racist, sexist, or other ist place. That is, in summary, to consider the ideas of Jonathan Haidt or Thomas Sowell rather than those of Ibram Kendi or Robin DiAngelo, and treat everyone as individuals judged on the content of their character, with skin color being no more important than their height or the color of their eyes and hair. It's a shameful reality, I think, that a tremendous amount of people believe what I just said, but are quite scared to say it, and the school board should take blame for that being the case. I appreciate the audience. Thank you. I have a little bit of an expanded version of that I'll email out.
Yeah, I think your mic is off, Elizabeth. Yeah, that would be helpful to mail out a printed copy, Daniel.
Next, we have announcements and celebratory comments from board members.
I would like to, I don't know if this is correct, but I wanted to congratulate the high school, which has formulated a community service activity sheet. Is that correct? Where students are able to reach out to community members who are in need of some assistance with some sort of activity. It may be raking their lawn or cleaning up their yard. But I just think that this is, I just saw it recently on the town manager's newsletter, and I just think that it's just a great way for students to connect with the community and the community to connect with students. So I was really pleased to see this, and I want to congratulate, I guess, the high school for pulling this together.
Yeah, I would have to give credit to the students, their counselors, and their grade level pod teachers. A lot of our teams choose different projects. All of our students are required the community service this year. Once we went into COVID and remotely in March, it was a harder ask because going out into the community was difficult, but we are trying to get back out there and making a lot of flexible options for our students to get their community service hours. So we're thankful for those wonderful opportunities too. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you, Colleen. And now I'd like to introduce Lisa Ryan. As you may recall, since shortly after we placed Tiffany Riley on administrative leave in June, we have been talking about when and how to go about restoring the communities of Windsor and West Windsor, both the educational communities and the communities at large. Despite being incredibly busy, but also with gushing praise from several people who recommended her, I reached out to Lisa, who lives in Rutland. Lisa and I spoke in July and a couple of times since as we drew nearer when we were ready as a board to help these two communities move away from certain conflict and towards a peace among us. Lisa, would you mind starting with a quick background of what you do?
Yeah, good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Perfect.
Okay. I apologize. I'm a little under the weather, so my voice is in and out. But thank you so much for having me this evening. I've been in contact, like Elizabeth said, with her since about July, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here tonight and to formulate some work going forward. So I'm Lisa Ryan. I live in Rutland City. I grew up in Rutland, attended Rutland City Public Schools. I moved away for college, where I went to Temple University and studied psychology and Spanish. And then when I moved home, once it was time to, start repaying back all of those loans, I was thinking about what I wanted to do and what that looked like for me. My family's in Rutland. I was raised in Rutland, so my roots are really strong in this community, in the community of Vermont. So eventually I decided to get my graduate degree. So I have a master's in mediation and applied conflict studies, which has really allowed me to take various leadership roles within my community and within my day-to-day work that I do, which is restorative and community justice work. So I'm the director of the Rutland County Community Justice Center at Brock Community Action. We help folks who are coming out of incarceration. We help them reintegrate back in the community utilizing restorative justice approaches. We also work with victims and harmed and impacted parties. I direct a supervised visitation program as well underneath the Community Justice Center, where we work with custodial and non-custodial families in DCF and who have children in DCF custody. And really, I say that all because all of the work that I do, and including being involved in as an alderwoman on Rutland City Board of Aldermen, is really grounded in conflict and conflict management and skill building and mediation and resolution. And restorative justice really fits really nicely. It pairs nicely with those things. So, my interest and kind of inclination to work with you all and a lot of what has been happening in your own community is to see what your needs are and hear from all of you, as far as how can we, make the community whole again? How can we engage in practices where we're valuing all opinions and all views? And restorative justice really comes into that, and that we are making sure everyone at the table has, an equal and equitable chance to speak and engage and be involved. So when Elizabeth asked me to join tonight, I hopped off a committee meeting. It's budget season for a lot of us, and the Board of Aldermen, we're deep in our budget. So I hopped off one call to get on this, and I'm happy to do so. But I'd love to know more about what you're looking for. I also do trainings on microaggressions and social and racial justice. I've worked collaboratively and with Tabitha Moore, who I'm sure many of you have, if you don't know her personally, you've heard about a lot of what's happened to her and her family. So a lot of the work that I do is based in RJ, is based in conflict, and also moving forward and making sure that we're living and we're really grounded in an equitable, anti-racist society.
Thank you so much for being with us, Lisa.
Thank you.
So I'm having there's so many people on here, I'm having a hard time seeing everybody, but does anybody have any thoughts about where we'd like to go with this? Rebecca, I know you had some thoughts about it. Amy, I know you had, I can't see you. I know you had some thoughts about it. Chris, I know you've had some thoughts about it. And I'm sure that that Nancy and Bill do too. I just haven't talked directly with you.
I just think we are, thank you, by the way, Lisa, for being here and just speaking in a direction of healing. And I think that's some of my concerns about what is going on. I feel that this is a defining moment, and and I strongly believe that everyone has something to say. And how do we come together is not necessarily what I want to say, but how do we move forward? How do we get to a place where we can speak to each other in a respectful manner? And although we may disagree, but just value that peace, that freedom that we do have to speak, and move forward on the issues that really need to be addressed. It's a really challenging time right now with the schools. I'm sure that schools will look back 2 years, a year or two from now, and say, what was that? How did that go? Our students are clearly being challenged in a way like never before. Our parents are being challenged in a way as like never before. Our teachers, and so we've got work to do. In spite of the challenges that we're living, we have work to do. And how do we do that and get back to that place? That's some of my thoughts.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Bill, you raised your hand. I can't see you on here, but please go ahead.
He's there and his hand is raised. And I'm sure he's trying to get to his mic.
I basically just want to say thank you for taking the time to come to speak on this extremely important subject.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
One of the questions I'd have for Lisa is, from your experience with doing this kind of work, I mean, do you think a series of forums might be helpful? Do you think how do you start to engage a community in some dialogue around some of these issues that can become pretty divisive if we don't have conversations about them?
Right. That's a really important question, and kind of at the center of all this, and and how do we move forward, and in what ways do we do that? I certainly think community forums can be helpful. I mean, of course, we are in unprecedented times, and whether that looks virtual or in person, probably virtual for the unforeseen future, but either way, gathering, and again, making sure in restorative justice, we talk about all parties. So those harmed, those who might have caused the harm, and then the community or victims. And so how do we center that and make sure it's part of all the work that we're doing? So I think community forums are, oops, did I freeze up?
No, you're good.
You're fine.
I think community forums are a great start. And I would also recommend workshops as well for the board, as a collective, moving forward with different workshops around microaggressions, anti-bias training, anti-racist training. And that way it allows you to develop and kind of expand your skills so that you can be more comfortable having these conversations and making these decisions. But I certainly would be in support of, facilitating conversations, between the board and either the public or any other parties that have been really centered around what's been going on lately.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I think, there was another hand that went up. Chris Ganjos.
Oh, there's your hand. Sorry.
You need your mic on too, Chris. He's trying to get there. And Amy also has her hand up too, Elizabeth. Chris is getting there, I can tell. These machines have been tough all day.
Yes, they really have. Lisa, I'm trying to be careful about your time. So
Yeah.
just
You want to
honestly,
go to Amy and then we can come back to Chris?
You're okay.
Amy, would you mind?
Nope, I'm, excuse me, I'm good. I'm also feeling like, been in meetings all day today. So my concern, and I would think the most challenging thing for mediation or a restorative conversation in this area is the fact that there are different perceptions of who is harmed and who is being harmed by all of this work, and a just an immediate jump to feeling defensive. And I applaud you and I thank you for wanting to come and help us have this conversation, because there has been a significant amount of defensiveness.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. And I think that's like part of the conversation that I'd like to, speak more independently with the board about is, what does that look like? There might be multiple responsible parties. There might be multiple folks who are impacted or harmed. And then there's a community too. So how do we, change lenses to make sure, everyone's being heard and supported and moving forward with this work?
Thank you.
Yo.
Now Chris is back with us.
Chris, do you want to quickly go? And we'll let Lisa go so we can get on her meeting.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And Lisa, I wanted to thank you for being here. And I think Amy may have, in the process of her question, though I had to cut out and come back, so I missed some of it. I wanted to ask you to give us a real short thumbnail definition of restorative justice for those people either on the call or the community that listens to this later on, so that some of us already understand it and we use words that not everybody does understand. So just define it.
Absolutely. So, and when I say restorative justice, that's a philosophy, right? It's when in my work, I say restorative justice because we're working within the criminal legal system. So when I talk about restorative justice, kind of big picture, I'm talking about using restorative approaches and transformative approaches to work through things. So, for example, in the work that I do with many folks coming out of incarceration who are under Department of Correction supervision, we're looking at how we can heal, how we can be restorative, how we can be holistic in making sure that folks are doing what they need to do in order to reduce recidivism, protect and enhance community safety, and make sure there are no victims. Restorative approaches and practices, and I apologize, I sort of started with this over broad lens of restorative practices, are taking some of those philosophies, not necessarily, in the context of the criminal legal system, but more so in life, in the way that we do things, and making sure we're transparent. Where really it's not an us versus them, it's a holistic approach that allows us to all come together in decision making, in working through things. When I think about restorative approaches, and I've done some work with schools and particularly Rutland Intermediate School on, things like community circles and how do we build community? How do we hold one another responsible respectively? And how do we have those hard conversations, and what is it like, and how do we frame those conversations and those questions so that, again, we're making sure equity is intact. We're making sure we're listening to people's emotions, and feelings, and we're really coming at it from really a bottom up, to processing and going forward in that way. That's a basic oversight of it, and I'd be happy to get you more, materials and a little bit more context around that. But little elevator pitch, that's what I've got for tonight.
No, that's good. And Elizabeth, will you keep in touch with Lisa in terms of just plans going forward?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you,
I
Lisa.
appreciate you all letting some of your time. And please, get your thoughts to Elizabeth about if you have, particular and specific things that you want and that you need, so that, essentially when I draw up some, scopes of services and things like that, I'm attending to the needs that you all want, because this is your process and I want to be here to support and facilitate that. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a-
Lisa.
Good luck with your budget.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right. So that was the wonderful Lisa Ryan. I tacked on a report of the Racial Equity Task Force, which is the governor's task force. Hold on, I'm going to put it in the. Where are the comments? Where are they?
If you got kicked out,
There they are. Sorry. Here's the task force that I'm referring to. So this is the governor's task force on racial equity. It's quite long. It's like 25 pages long. There are a few pieces to it that I thought would be good for us to, for our board to know about. There are a few recommendations concerning punishment and discipline. I'll just quickly read through some of it. It says, this is on page 11, punishment and disciplinary tactics, including expulsions, suspensions, and referral to law enforcement for student behavioral issues are counterproductive to countering systemic oppression in our school systems. These tactics force students to miss academic lessons, often making it impossible for the student to catch up. They also don't address the root cause for the student's behavior and squander the opportunity for students' growth in their emotional intelligence. The task force believes the state should prohibit expulsions, reduce suspensions, and stop referrals to law enforcement for student behavior, and instead adopt in-school and out-of-school services that address the root causes of student misbehavior and directly support their needs. I think you should be pleased with this because we're already on this path. I'm reading this to you because I feel like because this was a report commissioned by the governor, that we'll probably have some legislation that's will be coming up in this regard in the pretty near future. Furthermore, the impact of schools' current standard to identify and address bullying and harassment falls short of its intentions. The task force recognizes that the legal distinction between bullying and harassment is vague, ambiguous, and does not reflect the experiences of students of color, students with disabilities, and students who identify as LGBTQIA. These are students who report being subjected to actions by their peers that are intended to ridicule, humiliate, or intimidate them on a repeated basis, and that have substantially interfered with their right to access education. The task force also recognizes that both students and adults engage in behavior that could constitute harassment, but because it's masked or implicit, the evidence of racial slurs or epithets are not present. So anyway, it has a couple of recommendations on here, which I think are things that we've really already been talking about. One of them is the problem of our bullying definitions, or not definitions, but don't include. They require evidence, and they don't include. They require there to be. So this, sorry, I'm getting muddled. This would ask that a complainant be able to request an independent review of any bullying or harassment accusations. And so anyway, just the reason that I have brought this up is so that you could know where the governor's thoughts are headed. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Elizabeth, I do have a question, because
Yep.
I know that I've been told that we review policies, school policies on an ongoing basis. Would this be an opportunity to look at the policies that are related to harassment, that are related to bullying,
Yes.
and sort of help bring it in line with what the governor's report is requesting?
That's right. That's right. And also, we have policies and we have procedures. And I don't know that we have any policies that govern punishment or expulsion from school. I know that we have procedures that govern punishment and expulsion. And this sort of implies that that's going to be looked at a statewide level. And, you know, again, our board isn't necessarily, our board isn't where policy is made, it's at the SU board. But I brought it to your attention at this level because I thought you would also be pleased to see that what you're already doing is what they're recommending. So I think that's you should be proud of yourselves. Does anybody else have any questions or comments about this? I can't see any hands besides yours, Rebecca. Or do you have another question? Okay.
You learned how to put it down now. That's good. Yeah.
Okay. Moving on. Is next, I believe, is our budget.
Yes.
I hope everybody had a chance to look at the budget before just now. Before we start talking about the budget, I just feel it really necessary to say out loud that we are at the same budget process that we've had for the last at least 6 years. And I have to acknowledge that I'm frustrated here because we've been talking about, as a board, our desire to have the budget reflect our values so that when we present it to our taxpayers, we have something that we can explain and not just go through what the numbers are. We often have explanations for things like social and emotional interventions and things like that, but we don't have an overall picture of how the budget expresses our values. So I just want to say that out loud.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, I agree, Elizabeth, and I think that, yeah, I mean, I think it's just, you know, stated well, and the process, you know, maybe needs to start a little earlier, or maybe it has to spring from some sort of a summer retreat, but we get caught in that cycle of the budget cycle, and you don't always get that time. What I will say though is I know that Kate and Jennifer and Colleen have spent a fair amount of time in the context of the strategic plan to some degree, and also where, as an administrative team, they want to move the district forward. And I know they have a presentation they want to give tonight, and then Ed, you know, Ed has the numbers we can pull up later on. But I think it might be wise to just listen to their PowerPoint first, and then we can get questions from that, react to that. You know, they are providing the leadership for the Mount Scottney district, and I know they've worked hard on that.
And I also want to say that it's clear, it's abundantly clear that you guys worked really hard on this budget. So thank you.
I see Amy's hand up, Elizabeth.
Oh, sorry, Amy.
Yeah, just a quick comment. It is frustrating, but at the same time, at a certain point, we as the board, when we're looking at these numbers and preparing our presentation, have to take the numbers and relate them to our strategic plan. And I think it'll be really nice to hear what our administrators have to say. So I'll listen to their presentation. But we also, as a board, need to use those numbers in our presentation, showing that they do relate to the strategic plan, which I am really hopeful that they do. So thank you.
I think that's part of my frustration, Amy, is that we are given the budget, and then we are also the people who have to explain the budget, even though we don't. So.
Well, yeah, except that's part of our job.
Yeah, but I guess I'm saying that I wish I had more of a hand in the budget.
Yeah.
If I'm going to have to present it.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Okay.
Can everybody see that okay? Thumbs up, we good? Can you see that? Okay, good. All right. So who's going to kick this off? Is it Colleen?
Yeah.
I'll start it off. Thank you all for listening and giving us this opportunity. We'd like to do exactly what you've just asked, Elizabeth, and that is start with what we're doing and what we're excited about that we do believe is reflective of what the board is asking and wanting and supporting. So that's how we decided to start. We worked as a team, and we're thankful to Ed for meeting with us and helping Kate and I along the way as we're learning a little bit more so. And yeah, our number one piece is working as a team and being collaborative. And we are doing that as a team of 3, and we're also doing that with our admin team. And we want to be doing that with our school board and our community and our parents and our students and our teachers all the time. So that's our number one goal. So the first 3 things I'm going to talk about is our big picture learning, flexible pathways, and portrait of a graduate, and how some of those exciting things reflect in the budget and where we want to put our supports. So with big picture learning, what we're excited about is that this is a program started as a consultant who supported us about 4.5 years ago, and we've been able to attend conferences, have PD, have a consultant here at our school, in more than one school in our SU, and access to that consultant to help us with making a connection to flexible pathways and Act 77 and personalized learning plans for our students. And we saw a connection here that looked at out of the box thinking for leave to learn projects, leave to learn experiences, field trips, internships. They were matching nicely with our Flexible Pathways program. With our Flexible Pathways program, we were always offering some online components prior to COVID, but there was a much bigger need for our online programming with virtual high school, with ed options, with other online programs to offer those passion courses that we don't have the capability to offer in our school. So a class in Japanese class, a American Sign Language class, a unique science specialty. So those are the things we want to continue to offer for our students. But this year, both of these areas, big picture learning and leave to learn and internships as well, kind of took a step back due to safety and not traveling. And our flexible pathways and online learning increased. So they both kind of changed a little bit, but they're both pieces that we want to make sure we hold on to and are considering when we're looking at our budget planning and how it matches our wants for our students to have the needs and the passions to find the coursework that matches their capacity. And we want to make sure our students have that capacity, and our school has the capacity to offer it. With Portrait of the Graduate, we had the great work of our community and over 60 participants of employees, board, community members, and we came with our 5 competencies of perseverance, empathy, communication, critical thinking, and integrity. And we just wanted to touch base on a couple of those living examples that have already begun. And one of those, I think I mentioned it at another board meeting, was perseverance. And we saw it in a first grade classroom. The children were talking about what does perseverance mean? And the amazing stories about what it takes to learn how to ride a bike without training wheels were heartbreaking and so joyful at the same time. And empathy was built in automatically when the children were like, you'll get it, you'll be okay, when their friend didn't have their training wheels off yet. And the bottom line lesson was in our first grade classes that when you don't persevere, when you give up, you don't get to learn something new and have fun, was the message that first graders got. And so I bring that to our attention because our community was a big part of this strong communication of building Portrait of the Graduate competencies. And it's already trickling in an informal way. People are grasping to these great ideas. So we also have a junior class who did an entrepreneur program, and they persevered through the building, the prototyping, the creating, the adjusting the prototypes, selling, the governor making a call that the governor's order, we had to cancel the sale in a safe, COVID safe event on the Windsor Common. So the students had to persevere, be flexible, and then move on to online sales. So that was another example. And I want to speak about the communication because I know Jen's going to talk about the critical thinking and project-based learning and place-based learning, but the communication among the staff and us as a team, an administrative team of 3 working together with the rest of our admin team, is us modeling this good communication, this great communication that we heard our guest speaker talk about, and working through things and making sure everyone's being heard. So those are the pieces that we're excited about, because working through these difficult conversations to come is something we're going to keep doing and persevering on ourselves. So that was my share. So thank you for letting me share. Kate.
Over to me. So as Colleen mentioned, a lot of what that has come out of this is how can we model what we've been experiencing? And Jennifer, Colleen, and myself are in this unique situation where we were kind of thrown into, at some points over the summer, what felt like a nightmare inside a nightmare. And we had to spend a tremendous amount of time with each other. And I always say to them, guys, this doesn't feel bad to me. This feels magical, because we have such different skill sets and such different strengths that really build off each other. And we learn so much from watching each other display those strengths. And this is working for us. So we thought, well, how can we have this naturally, as it happened to us, as natural as a pandemic can be, how can we naturally transfer this to our staff and our students and our communities? So we kind of looked at what we already had in place in both locations and looked for natural fits that would feel good to our staff. And one of the first things that came to mind was our March intensives. So like everything else in the world, they came to a screeching halt in March of 2020. And that gave us time to reflect on what is the purpose of March intensives, what do we want to get out of them, and how can we build upon them? So the value of March Intensives is that it allows teachers to engage students in unique learning environments around topics that they wouldn't have in a traditional program. The topics are usually centered around the teacher's passions and skill sets. So it helps us to build relationships because students get to interact with teachers in a new light. And the other thing that it does is that's really important to us is the March Intensives provides our students with opportunities to get out of the Upper Valley and see what else is happening. They've taken trips to New York, Washington, D.C., Boston, and to bring those experiences back into our building. So how can we make this district-wide? In talking with Jennifer and Colleen, would really like to start working together to start building up our 5 through 8 team as one. So in the next time we have an opportunity to do March Intensives, which we're assuming is going to be 2022, what we would like to do is start a mini March Intensives in grades 5 and 8, and that would be district-wide. So Albert Bridge School and Windsor School would have the opportunity to do age-appropriate mini March Intensives. They'd have some constraints is that they'd stick to day trips in the local area. And they could be classes such as CPR or babysitting, stuff that would get both our staffs and our children together. The next fit that we saw that was kind of natural is already happening is our MTSS team, and that's our multi-tiered systems of support. So when we began this process and examining our structure about 7 years ago, there was a big push to build up our tier 2 and our tier 3 interventions, which looks like pull-out support and special education services. So the pandemic combined with the release of Vermont's new field guide led us back to what we kind of had been missing the past couple years. How can we build our universal practices so that we're relying less on these tier 2 and 3 supports and getting back to how do we wrap around these kids? So in this case, it seemed like once again, the pandemic aligned the stars for us and we were forced into these pod systems. And that allowed us to kind of achieve what we've been trying to achieve for a long time, having teams made up of academic support, social emotional support, specialists, and meeting the children's needs. And it's working. And there's parts of these that would like to continue to keep post-COVID. And what we've begun doing is our MTSS team would like them to function as one team. So meaning the leader, our MTS leaders in our school, Bridget and Gina, Erin, Maureen, in Jennifer's school, Amanda, that they're working together. And Gina provides a nice bridge for that because she's been back and forth between the two schools for 2 or 3 years now, I believe. So that our systems and our resources are shared where our greatest need is and what our grade and at the appropriate grade levels. So both schools now would have access to the same expertise, the same skill sets, and the same resources. The last thing that would seem like a natural fit, we were both already doing, and that's that early release Friday and the enrichment for the student. But again, we'd like that to stop operating as silos in each buildings and provide the necessary PD opportunities that all our staff needs to benefit all our kids, and staff would be working together. And our hope would be that our children could spend time together too, accessing the same enrichment activities, no matter what campus they're provided on, the ones that are the best fit for our kids. I think I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer now.
Hi, everybody. I'm navigating the slides, so just bear with me. So teaching and leading, we're going to talk a little bit about project-based, place-based teaching and leading towards stewardship, sustainability, and real-world problem solving lends itself well to place-based and project-based approaches and their pedagogy. Although sustainability is a global goal, its problems and solutions are anchored and situated in our local ecologies, in our communities. Place-based learning can be difficult to integrate, as can project-based learning, because it requires teachers to, particularly for place-based, to create their own curriculum. You can't take somebody else's place and put it in your place. That's the magic of place-based curriculum. And integrate experiences in which the students explore issues within their community to develop practical solutions. And we see this as Although we were already starting this before we had the Portrait of the Graduate discussions, we view this as an excellent way of encouraging and practicing our Portrait of a Graduate competencies. When we think about critical thinking, perseverance, communication, and empathy particularly, all of these approaches that we've been talking about from the beginning, big picture, flexible pathways, March intensives, the MTSS system, our enrichment and professional development, all of these approaches that we are asking of our students and us is not to simply know them. The big departure here from what traditional teaching has been is that we don't learn about ecology. We become ecologists. We don't learn about government. We become active civic engaged participants in experiences within our community. We don't learn about science and math. We become mathematicians and we work as scientists. We don't simply learn how to write. We're authors with a purpose for authentic need to communicate our thinking, our concerns, our passions, and our compassion. So this is the shift that we are in the process of making already. And I feel like Portrait of a Graduate is ideally situated already where we have been trying to go. We now know that in order to change the brain and develop these kinds of more complex skills, we actually have to engage in the very process of doing it, not learning about it. And we have to get those neural networks doing it and practicing it in order for us to grow. So we don't learn about them, we use them. Our SEL work, I'll talk a little bit more about this if at the end of this we still want to hear about it. But I'll give you a brief overview of where we are, which is one of the things I'm pretty excited about since 2014. We've really been working across the whole supervisory union to pull together our social emotional learning, as the evidence at this point is pretty clear that it is central and fundamental to all good learning. And the guideline for our social emotional approach, it has a philosophy behind it, which is we believe in our district, we believe that kids do well if they can. And what that means is that if a kid could do well, he would do well. And if they're not doing well, something must be getting in their way from doing well. And on the surface, it probably seems like common sense. But as a friend often says, you know what they say about common sense? It ain't that common. But I want us to be clear that this is a strong, strong departure from what traditional thinking has been in our schools and in many homes across the nation. And we were no exception. Traditional discipline has looked an awful lot more like kids do well if they want to, which puts us in a position of trying to make a kid want to do well. Elizabeth already alluded to this with the statement from the, I forget what it's called now. It's not a task force.
Racial equity.
Thank you. The racial equity
Task
something
force.
from the it was a task force. Oh no. Okay, it's a task force. And if you think about, you know, a school, because we're a school, right? If you think about detentions, suspensions, expulsions, all of these interventions are aimed at telling a kid, you better shape up. This is important. And there are going to be some pretty bad consequences if you don't start behaving properly. And when a kid is trying their utmost to behave properly, to stay in class, not to explode, not to be that kid, but they can't do it, and we continue to say, yes, you can if you just try harder, eventually the kid is probably going to start to own that and start to think a little bit about who they are as a person based on how it is we are treating them. And I think we need to give some serious thought to the cost that occurs when we are sending the not so subtle message to a child that we think they could pull it off if they just tried harder. In other words, along with every reward or threat of consequence comes a message, which is, I don't think you're trying hard enough, because otherwise, why would we be trying to motivate them? We must think part of the problem is that they're not trying hard enough. And I think it doesn't take long before we send that message enough time that the kid actually decides that maybe it might be true. In other words, as Stuart Avalon often reminds us, if you give a dog a name, eventually they will answer to it. You send them the message enough times that they're just not trying hard enough. Eventually, they may come to the conclusion, I'm not trying hard enough, in which case they might start to drop out. That's literally and figuratively. Drop out of school, drop out of actually engaging in the process that could help. And finding other kids, by the way, who have also dropped out of life as well. And I think this is a consequence of us sending the wrong message that comes with those interventions. Thank goodness already in our times, in our schools, we have made a shift from this, and we are doing some serious work. And I think it's been a really long process. And if we're still interested, I can talk more about that later. One of the things that we're really trying to do, even though this is a time of, in essence, a crisis time when we're in this pandemic, as well as other things going on around us socially and in our personal lives, you know, resiliency is essentially being able to take those tough moments and what I've been thinking more and more about, which is finding the rainbow in the rain. And this team has found that the rainbow in our rain is relationships. We are building those through teaming, and not just teaming amongst us as the three administrators of our district, but we're looking at teaming across, and they have been teaming. We have been teaming all year long, and this is helping us break down some of the silos. The working together has made a critical difference for our students in building relationships with the adults building relationships with each other. And I don't know if Kate or Colleen at some point have shared some of the data, but in both schools, the office referrals, the discipline issues are so far down from what they have been in the past. So we want to hold on to those things. And, you know, we're not just talking about the formal leadership roles. We're talking about all of us, right? All of us taking ownership and leading with our strengths and learning from the others who have strengths that we need to shore up and that need more nurturing. So this brings us to what we think is our biggest change in this budget that we're proposing, which is we are shifting to what I'm viewing it anyway as a collaborative leadership model. And within this, we're hoping to bring strengths to both the schools by supporting our staff, by supporting our students through the big idea, multi-tiered systems of supports, really to help us create efficiency in our systems, not just efficiency for money's sake, but efficiency for actual capacity. One of the things that is unique to rural areas is we don't have the same access that other larger, more urban settings would have to resources of skilled, talented people. So what we really want to do is make sure that we are supporting the growth of our staff by using our staff as well as our students in leadership positions and sharing this stewardship of our community, of our environment. I'm going to pass back to Colleen to put some meat on the bones.
So shifting to this collaborative model, the actions we need to take are sharing based on the needs of our students and our staff. As Jennifer said, we want to build the experts on our staff. We want to build the leaders in our social emotional supports, in our areas of academics, our teachers who take the lead on March Intensive, our teachers who take the lead in extracurricular activities, in our student governments. And so we want to build the leaders, and we want to support and grow the leadership that best works for our students. And what's working is when we're teaming together, and we're seeing a lot of transition of Albert Bridge students to Windsor, and sometimes in the opposite direction, making connections from the adults in, being on both campuses makes school easier for students when they're seeing the familiar faces. And that's what we want to do. We want to build this team to work together. Our school counselors have always traditionally made those really nice transitions for our kids. Our elementary counselors know our students well, and the more they know about our 5th and 6th grade programs in both buildings together, they're going to transition our students to 7th and 8th grade more easily. And the more they're visible, the better it is for our students to see that they still have a person in their corner that they know while they're getting to know more new staff members. Our social, emotional, and interventionists sharing resources, expertise, and time between buildings. Our social, emotional interventionists and our behavior interventionists can be shared amongst our buildings as a Mount Scottney staff, a Mount Ascutney team. And that's nice, especially when we know of staff members who are working with particular students, and then that student has to make a transition to another building. And lastly, we are already starting connecting our MTSS team and our 504 approaches, because we want best practices and we want it to be consistent across the board. Students with specialized plans, that's more stressful sometimes for parents. We want to make those transitions as easy as possible, and they should look similar in both those buildings. So I'm going to pass it on to Kate.
Jen, could you put up the next slide? Thanks. So how does all this excitement and all this planning translate into numbers? Albert Bridge next year is looking at a population of 40 plus their kindergarten class. They're going to do grade bands 3 and 4 is going to be combined, and 5 and 6 is going to be combined. In Windsor School, we're looking at a total of 492 plus our K students. The only thing we want everyone to keep on their radar is we're wondering if, due to the pandemic, many parents held their kids back from starting kindergarten this year, and will those numbers be larger than usual next year? But we won't know that for a little bit. If we go to our next slide, so our total wages is down. And that kind of asks, so how's that happening? Are we cutting personnel during this time? So this does reflect our wage increase, and there's been a couple changes. Overall, our teachers that retired were veteran teachers. As we know, when they're retiring, they're on the other end of the salary scale. So that makes an impact. Albert Bridge School had a 0.3 teacher whose purpose was to support the combined classrooms during math time. They weren't able to find someone to replace that. But again, the systems that we were forced to put into place this year showed us that we didn't need to replace that teacher, because the model that we're using this year with accessing all of our staffs and all of their skills, it worked, and it showed us that we did not need another position there. And finally, as we've alluded to, we've kind of reorganized administration. We went from 3 administrators in Windsor building and 1 administrator in Albert Bridge to right now operating as 3 administrators for the district. As Jennifer has talked about and Colleen has talked about, we're showing this to our staff, and Jennifer has been coming over here on Tuesdays. The invitation and the possibility of us starting to go over to Albert Bridge is there, but we're taking this small because we had a tremendous amount of time for us to work together over the summer and get to know each other. And we're just hoping that this translates to our staff. On the next slide, this is the benefits. This reflects the 10% increase, but it is a direct result of the decrease in the wages, that the benefits are not as high. And then our next slide is contracted services. So you can see we made an impact here, and that's for a couple of reasons. HCRS used to provide us with BIs and support staff. Katie has really taken the lead on that, and we now hire those people directly. So they work for the SU, not for HCRS. We have HCRS in our building. We have a clinician in the school. Our speech and language pathologist, that used to be a contracted service. So anytime it was contracted through special ed, but anytime regular ed needed to access that person, we also had to pay for that service separately. It caused us to pay for transportation, lots of things. Now we have those people directly on our district staff. The assessments out of district, the food services and the buses have moved to the supervisory union level, and that has saved us some money. We Are Hope and the counseling I'm going to talk about together, because it's a little bit tricky, and it's kind of it's kind of all the stars aligning and coming together. So We Are Hope is kind of like life coaching for kids across the SU, and that's paid for out of Medicaid. The difference at Windsor is that we paid for a clinician for about $80,000. And this happened at one point. Windsor School had 2 school counselors in the elementary school and 2 in the high school. We did not replace one of those positions. We replaced it with this We Are Hope clinician. Now that we're operating the way that we are, with the team approach and social emotional supports and building up that team across the district, and we're looking at district wide, we do have 2 elementary counselors, because we have Maureen Mulligan, who's based out of our building, and David Gall, who's based out of Albert Bridge, and we still have our 2 to high school counselors. Do we really need to pay this money to contract a clinician out of We Are Hope? We're not accessing them as much as we would want to. And we think that between the HCRS clinician that we access here in our building and between our school counselors who do have a background, Maureen Mulligan started out as an HCRS clinician, who do have this background, and the training and unification of our social emotional teams, do we need to continue to access this agency strictly for a clinician? And Jennifer, Colleen, and myself are in agreement that we do not, that we can move forward without it. Next, total maintenance and repair. This is kind of Jim Taft, so I'm presenting this on behalf of him.
I can jump in, Kate, if you want.
No, I can do this one, then you got the next one, I think.
Okay, go ahead.
We are pausing this year on any construction. We're not putting up walls, taking down walls. We're not doing any rearranging in any of the buildings. And our equipment is all up to speed with, we don't need to add any more. We don't need to spend a lot of money fixing any of them. So that's why we were able to make this difference in this part of the budget. And I think, Colleen, you're up now.
Yeah. So we did hear that our transportation system has been centralized to the SU budget. There are always costs with extraordinary situations for some students who may need that or out of district transportation. But one of the great things that's come out of this as being centralized in the SU budget is that we get to work with the bus company to be more efficient about bus routes that work for us as an SU rather than a building to building bus route. And that allows where there's overlap in high school and elementary siblings in two different buildings, making sure the bus routes work for the geography of our students and families rather than what's traditional. So that's a nice connection with it being SU wide. And our next slide, not much change here at all. There's a bit of a phone system cost increase, but our insurance and postage has not changed much at all. Jen.
Okay. So I'll talk briefly. One of the advantages of us becoming a merged district is that the students who at West Windsor, starting in 7th grade, used to have choice. Now they are all heading over to Windsor, but we still have the grandfathered group of people who have chosen, and here's essentially where they are. In the corner or the column on your right are the costs that we currently are paying, and then up at the top is the grade that the students are in, and then based on each school where they are. Each year as we go through this, we expect to continue to see significant differences in this. Sorry, my dog is just really excited. I don't know what. And so long as we don't get a lot of changes that we don't quite expect, that should continue. So the total SU assessments, those of you who have been in the SU meetings, you know that those are an increase of 9%, but they've also added some things, including the transportation costs, or early childhood education has gone up and special education increases have gone up. Our supplies were, cutting a little bit here and there. So we're looking at just trying to knock a few things out of the budget for next year, knowing that it's another tough year for our state, for our taxpayers. And we think we can navigate this fairly successfully. So overall, our budget for this coming up year, we are looking at being down 2.71% total, which is a difference of $321,509. Before I open this up to questions and comments, I want us all just to take a moment and step back and reflect together. Why are we here? What's our purpose? I know this is a budget discussion, and I know a lot of people have spent exceptional time, energy, brain power, particularly lately, trying to help us make sense of this throughout our community. Why do we show up? Why do you as a board member invest your time and energy in this? We've seen the numbers. It ain't because you're getting paid well. So why do we as educators do the work that we're doing? And I've been grappling with this for a little while now. At the same time, I've recently started struggling with one of our 5 competencies from the Portrait of the Graduate, which is integrity. And I grapple with this because I think it's a really challenging concept to get clear about, especially when we think about how are we supposed to teach it? What does it mean for our students? What does it mean for us, right? And one final thought that I'd like to leave us with is, integrity has 2 meanings if you look it up on Google, which originally I thought that's pretty ironic. But then as I started thinking about the definitions, I think they're necessary for each other. They're in essence, a marriage. And integrity, on one hand, has to do with a moral compass and honesty. And on the other hand, the definition is about being whole and undivided. This, I think we believe, is the work that we have to do. We have to teach our students how to be critical thinkers, how to remain curious, to ask the questions, even the tough questions, to teach our students to care for each other, to care for themselves, to be stewards of the world they live in, to the world that they inherit from us, the world that they're going to pass on. And this reminds me something that Mark and I, my late husband and I, used to grapple with often, which is, as teachers, what is our goal? What is our mission in a child's life, whether it's as a parent teacher or as a formal educator? And Mark used to say the primary goal is to have the students who we are there to support, we're there to teach, to surpass us. That's the goal. It's not for them to know what we know. It's not for them to do it how we do it. For their life's challenges will be different than ours. There will be some similarities. Their worldly experiences are going to be inherently different than ours. And so when I think of integrity, to have a system that supports that unified mission to develop thinkers who work together with compassion, with passion, to meet the challenges that they face, I can think of no better mission for us. And as a leadership team, our job, Kate, Colleen, myself, Dr. Baker, Angie Ledoux, Katie Ahern, right? Our job is to support our colleagues, our fellow teachers, those who are in those classrooms daily with our kids, working tirelessly to support those kids, our parents who have undying commitment to the well-being and success, however they define success, of their children. I believe that we're important in education, that we know better. We're a place in society where it is essential. And we're at a point in our district, in our supervisory union, where I believe we can stand united to do this work. What we're asking for in this budget is not so much about the numbers, but about the chance to take the risk of not knowing where we're going necessarily, having ideas, but not knowing, and knowing that the importance is the process of allowing us to team, to do what we're asking our students ultimately to do, to team up as educators with our parents, with our students, alongside our community members, and evolve into something that we don't yet know what it is. And if we're authentically doing this work, if we're asking our students to do this work, shouldn't we as the adults also then grow in the same way? I think this is the integrity that we want to hold ourselves to. Not that we're teaching it, but that we're living it through the process of building the skills in communication, perseverance, critical thinking, and empathy. And I believe in our team, this communities, the entire community that we live in, the Windsor, West Windsor community, in our ability to do this remarkable work. So thank you for taking the time to listen to us, and thank you for caring. Questions, comments? I'll turn it back over to you, Elizabeth.
Well, first, that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was great. That was the best budget presentation I have ever seen in my entire life. Thank you for the context. Thank you for the hard work. Thank you so much.
Welcome. I just want to say, we can't let Ed get caught in the shuffle here. He'll probably tell you we asked 100 questions. It was probably closer to 75, but it was like if you give him a mouse a cookie every time we asked one, it answered another one, and he took his time to make sure that we understood what these numbers were, where these cuts were coming. So shout out to Ed. We stole his thunder tonight by asking to present, but we appreciate it.
That was really great. Thank you, Ed. Thank you all so much. Jennifer, Kate, and Colleen, that was fantastic. The first hand that I saw go up was Chris's. I'm not sure if it went up before Amy's or not, but Chris, please go ahead.
Yeah. To reiterate mostly what Elizabeth already said, I am so moved and honored to be in the presence of this process and to hear the concepts that we have been talking about as a board and as an administrative group for several years really start to come together and really come out into something that you can really see, and the possibilities of the change and the positive change that's in front of us is, like I said, it's moving. I've never been moved by a budget presentation before. I not even ever think about being moved by a budget presentation before. I was looking for my phone to play solitaire, and when budget presentations start, I'm getting old and honest about some of this stuff. But yes, that was terrific, and I don't have any questions. Yeah, that's all. Thanks. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was definitely a moment. Thank you. Amy, please go ahead.
Well, my comment, again, not really a question, but comments, kind of like Chris, was, wow, that was a moving presentation. And can you present for us at town meeting? Yeah. But what was so exciting to hear and almost brought, well, tears of joy was when you talked about not being building administrators, but district administrators, that this is something when we were talking, like Chris said, however many, what feels like 100 years ago, just wanting to work together as a team, administrators with teachers, with parents, with students, and all of us coming together. And what you said, Jennifer, about students not learning about doing something, but actually doing, that they are writers, that they are mathematicians, that they are sociologists, that scientists, that is exactly, just perfectly what we want our kids to be doing. And I think that would also be extremely exciting for teachers, students, and the families to hear when their kids come home and say, I'm a mathematician, or just talking about what they're doing in their place-based learning. So thank you, and I'll stop now.
Thank you, Amy. I'm reminded of actually a comment that I made when you and I presented our plan to the Agency of Education, and it was that, when we were talking about, or when we were presenting our district merger plan, that we've never been here before. We've never, you've done this exciting thing by considering yourselves district-wide, and nobody's ever done this before, at least not here. And that's really, it's very inspiring and really cool. Rebecca?
Well, I also want to thank you. Being on the board for a very short amount of time, your presentation brought me up to date on all of the questions that I've had. I mean, you really have talked about things that I've had questions about, and I've dug into some of it, but you really put it in perspective for me to this evening, and showed me, okay, this is what it looks like, so I really want to thank you, and I appreciate so much the presentation. I did have a question, and that question I think was Kate. One of the comments that you had made is, and it sounds like you, all three of you, were really thoughtful about making this sort of a decision when you looked at your counselors, and being an ex-guidance counselor, I kind of had, where you have decided to make a shift there, and the shift sounded awesome, and I, but it sounds like you sort of were eliminating a counselor's position, or I wasn't totally clear on that.
No, a couple of years ago, I'm going to say 3 or 4 years ago, Windsor operated with two school counselors on the elementary side. So I think they functioned K-8, and then 2 for 9-12. So they were looking at kind of the same counselor to student ratio. One of those counselors left abruptly, and for whatever reason, we never replaced that. And then we contracted We Are Hope as an SU, and they're not clinicians. They're kind of like life coaches for kids is the best way I could describe it. But we never filled that counselor position. And then a decision was made to get a clinician in the building for some of our higher need students. And we would do that through We Are Hope. Through the process of us learning about this budget and asking, geez, Ed, what is this money? We were paying $80,000 for that clinician. And kind of the experiences we had this year, and when we step back and look at where we can make natural connections between the two campuses, our counseling system came into play. Why should David give up any kind of connections with those kids, right, when they come over here in 7th grade? And Maureen has a really strong clinician background. Why can't she go over to Albert Bridge if necessary? It just seemed like, we have this opportunity right now to make this change. Let's do it. And if we're wrong, then we'll own that, and we'll go back and we'll figure it out. But we don't think we are.
Great. Thank you so much.
I see Nancy has her hand up too.
Colleen, did you want to follow up with that? Did you have your hand up?
I just wanted to say one of the pieces as working as a team and our philosophy of collaborating, something we've been saying a lot lately, and I heard it earlier this evening that we're working through it. Jen's saying, can we have the opportunity to work through the process? Even if we don't know what things are to come for the future, can we work through the process? And that's what we're trying to model. But everybody on this call has equally important perspectives and expertise. So we're always trying to build that. And as educators, we're always trying to find the teachable moment to model for our students. And best practices meet our students where they're at, meet our families where they're at, meet everybody on this call where we're at, our teachers. And we say, students do well if they can. We've been saying principals do well if they can. School board members do well if they can. Our superintendent does well when he can. Like, we all are in this together. So that's what we believe in. We hope you appreciate the work we put into it, because it meant a lot to us to do a good job.
Yes, I think we all appreciate all of it. It's clear that we all really love the work that you put into it. Nancy?
I just wanted to add my thanks. It put a huge smile on my face to hear that wonderful presentation. And I just kept thinking, inspirational. It was just wonderful. Thank you. That's all.
Amy, do you still?
From Ed,
What's that?
That was an Ed recommendation. He said, talk about what inspires you. So we did it.
Excellent.
And
Amy,
yes,
okay.
I had one more comment, and that was kind of a follow-up on what Kate just said, that you hardly ever hear people saying this, that if we're wrong, we'll own up. You know, that going in a direction, trying something new, that we always think, well, we're right, we can't be wrong. And so thank you for understanding that. I think, what were we talking about? I think with the strategic plan or portrait of a graduate, you know, giving ourselves the room for failure and to learn from that failing. So thank you. That was an example. I'm so excited.
Is Chris's hand still up, or is that an old hand?
It's a new hand. If I
All right,
can.
go ahead.
Just the simple fact that we're in all of what's the potential and the possibility of this plan and all of that, and just on the sidelight of the actual budget, the budget came in under last year. That's like, this is a bonus. That's just, I would have been happy with that, you know, as a oh gosh, because COVID is here and we've got to tighten our belts. But now we're coming in with, oh, we can tighten our belts from the COVID standpoint and from the financial standpoint and do more things and be more excited about what's going on, rather than just, okay, we were able to hold things down. You know, like I said, this is an exciting budget rather than just a budget. So thank you again for all of that, including the reduction in costs.
Can we pass the bill tonight? I mean, the budget tonight? David, you're muted.
Yeah, there might be a reason why I'm muted, because, and I certainly, after that exquisite presentation, and I also applaud the three administrators. They worked really hard at this, and they worked with Ed, and they definitely knocked it out of the park tonight. And I think it's most of what's really, it's the sincerity and the integrity behind the words. I mean, they really believe what they're telling you. It's not just, you know, fuzz and fancy fluff. But the real point to this, first of all, to answer your question, Elizabeth, yes, you could approve this bottom line tonight. I mean, you know, what you've got to remember is that there are going to be a couple of adjustments. We just settled the teacher contract today in mediation, and that was exciting. And there's going to be a little bit more of an increase, which will do a little bit more of a wage increase. I don't know how much it'll impact. And then we're going to get all that tax stuff from the agency here in the next month or so, and Ed will do his magic with that worksheet, and then we'll know how much this bottom line drop results in a tax rate. So you know, you could wait till January and do that. I mean, what I love about what you just said, Elizabeth, is I think budgets should be passed on their expenditures and how well they tie to what you believe in and what you're trying to present. And if the sincerity and enthusiasm of this budget is what it is, I mean, I think, you know, adopting that bottom line now, and again, Ed would have to work the numbers on the actual salary. So I don't know whether we could put a final number there. And I noticed his hand went up, but I think we probably are still about a month away.
Okay, Ed, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say congratulations to Kate, Colleen, and Jennifer. They did an excellent job, and it's all credit goes to them. They really we worked together. I grilled them on whether they knew what the numbers were. When I showed them the account summary, I wanted to make sure that they understood, unlike in the past, what was buried in that reduction or increase. And it got contentious, but we got through it. The other thing is, I want to make sure that, you know, it's great to see the board so enthusiastic. But I will say that, as David said, they just settled the teacher's contract today. I think I'm okay in saying that. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
I'd like the opportunity to get real numbers in there for wages. I don't expect that they'll be drastically different, but certainly they will be different. And then I think it's important that you get a tax rate. I could potentially, once I get those numbers out, I could send out the budget again via email so you'd have time to review it. And if we met again, I mean, it doesn't have to be January. It has to be whenever it's convenient to you. But if we met again in the next few weeks or however long it takes me to get the numbers together, I think it would be a pretty short meeting.
I agree. Thank you so much, all of you, for doing that.
Well done. So I think we could set, at the end of the meeting, we can talk about when we might want to set a meeting to adopt the budget. It could be that last week in December. It could be that first week in January. It's up to the board.
Moving along, Jennifer, are you prepared to go at long last in your trauma transformed, or do you want to wait? It's up to you.
I'm happy to wait. That's a lot of information we've already given to you guys, but if you'd like to have that information, I can do that now. Either's fine with me.
What's your pleasure?
Knowing how the brain works as adult learners, it would probably be, if I were the teacher, I'd probably say now is not the best time to give that additional information.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Spoken like a true teacher.
Okay, well, wait, we'll put that next time.
She's ready to go.
Okay, so that leaves us, now we're at COVID-19 updates.
Yeah, so, and there's not a whole lot there. There's a whole lot there. Believe me, there's never just a little bit, but I think the real critical pieces to this is the surveillance testing that went on right before we left on the Thanksgiving break, and about 50% of our staff across the SU, it was voluntary. You didn't have to be tested. And I think, the folks who decided to do that were pleased that they did. I think we may even get more takers the next time. They're going to try to do it once a month, which I think will be helpful. I do think, though, that it was a wise decision to take that week after Thanksgiving and go remote, because we did have a couple of positive cases. And I talked to some of my colleagues, superintendents, who tried to come back on November 30th, and they came back, but they were sending lots of teachers home, lots of kids home. They had to shorten the day in a couple of districts because they didn't have enough teachers to get through the day. We avoided all of that by having that remote week. And in consultation with the union and the administrators, we decided it might be best to do the same thing during the Christmas break. So we're going to take that week of January 4th and go remote. And I'll tell you, our teachers have stepped up and they're doing a much better job with remote instruction. They prefer in person. Parents prefer in person. We want to keep the kids in school, but we think that the payoff of not having to send 30 or 40 or 50 kids home because they have to quarantine is a trade-off for that remote week, so we can keep them in school after that January break. The governor is going to have another news conference on Friday. His last executive order that talked about the multi-household gatherings went through December 10th, I think, or 11th. So he's going to have to either change that order or reinstitute that order on his press. I don't know how many of you watch his press conferences on Friday, but they're on, I think, around 11 o'clock. And Channel 3 has them live. You can get them online as well. So pay close attention, because I think he's going to address the multi-household issue again, the holiday break, and whether or not there's going to be some suggestions that all schools take at least a week after the holidays, and we'll see how that goes. We did slow down athletics. I think you've probably noticed that athletics. The original plan at the state level was to have high school athletics begin on November 30th. It did not. And right now it's indefinitely postponed. I don't think we'll have athletics at the high school level until after the holidays are over. But that's okay. We can start basketball in January and go into March or April. There's nothing that says you have to play basketball in December or January. It's just that you want to try to get a season in, because we have a lot of kids whose passion are sports, and you want to be able to play to that. And so we'll keep working on that. But the one thing I want to say in closing is that our staff and our communities and our parents have been absolutely wonderful. I send out those weekly sort of updates, and I always kind of, when I hit the send button, I always kind of shiver a little bit, because I never know, even on that last one about taking that week after Christmas. But I'll tell you, I get, if I get 20 emails back, which I do sometimes, 17 of them are positive, and they are just so appreciative of us keeping them informed, of us keeping their kids safe. And it's the same thing with the staff. I think, they're getting COVID fatigue, they're getting tired, but they've done yeoman's work of keeping this going. And that's everybody from support staff to special educators to regular educators to the administrators. So I think, again, even in this COVID pandemic, we can be proud of the work that we're doing and the support that the board gives us in trying to do that work. I don't know if anybody had anything to add to that on the administrative team, or any questions from the board, but that's kind of where we are now. I know Elizabeth is going to be busy legislatively, because in Montpelier, because we're going to have to address some of these issues that are COVID related, like what to do about town meeting, what to do about next year's harmless clauses around some of the budgeting issues, so it's going to be a busy season, not only a budget season locally here, but Elizabeth is going to be busy. I think we have a legislative breakfast this Friday. Without the breakfast, I'm going to still come, even though there's no food, but it'll be virtual. And we're going to talk to our legislators about what the superintendents in the Southeast think are some of those priorities. They're the same priorities that the legislators have. But that's it for me, unless you have questions.
Nancy, do you have your hand up?
Yes. Just for a personal thank you to all the school principals, because that week after Thanksgiving was beautifully thought out, and it was a very good week, and it wasn't. Maybe all of us who have children at home were primed a little bit, but I thought it went wonderfully, and I was very, very grateful for all the work that went into that week. And I look forward to the week after Christmas, in January.
Thanks, Nancy.
I think for our family, there was a little bit of apprehension about the week after Thanksgiving, because there was almost like a PTSD effect from distance learning in March. Actually, it was really interesting. But anyway, okay. The next item thank you very much, David. Thank you to our principals and to all of our staff and teachers. You're all holding up remarkably well and doing a fantastic job, and I really appreciate all of you.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we have the tuition question.
Right. So, Lucy Dunn is a resident of West Windsor. I don't know if Lucy is at the meeting tonight or not. She was invited to be here. Is Lucy on the line? Anyhow, there was a request for tuition to be paid under the grandfathering provisions in our merger agreement for one of her high school students to attend the Kent School in Connecticut. And what we've done traditionally as a superintendent, I review the website of anything that could be potentially religiously affiliated. Sometimes I'll go visit the school. I decided not to go to Connecticut to do this today, but I have done that in the past. But the website, I think, clearly pointed out the Episcopal affiliation. And to make a long story short, I had originally, over the summertime, denied the request, and there was no appeal to the board. But just recently, there's been a court case filed in Vermont for 3 supervisory unions who have in the past denied tuition to religiously affiliated schools, and those 3 supervisory unions are being represented in court by the McNeil law firm and out of Burlington, or is that Montpelier? I'm not sure where Bill is from. And their recommendation to me was that you should always encourage the parents, even if they don't really want to appeal to the board, because the board makes those final decisions by statute, and also they have another appeal to the Agency of Education. So my recommendation would be to deny the request, and then Bill Ellis from the law office, I know we're going to have an executive session. He'd like to come in and just spend 5 minutes with us and explain, all the ins and outs before you make a decision publicly tonight. You could, when we come out of executive session, you can make that decision. But certainly, if there are any public questions you have, it is a complicated issue. By the way, the lawsuit that we are involved in has nothing to do with the Mount Scottney School District. It's the Heartland School District. One of the students in Heartland was denied tuition to the New England Classical Academy over in Claremont, I think, or it's over in New Hampshire, and that has a strong Catholic affiliation. That's the case that's pending in court right now. But Bill can explain a little more about that. I know the Agency of Education is supposed to give us some direction on how to handle these. We haven't had any in the past, and we really need some direction.
So, Dave, do you have any examples of parents in our district in Windsor or West Windsor who have tried? I guess not Windsor.
No,
Windsor would be tuition anyway. I mean, paid out of pocket anyway. But are there any examples in West Windsor?
This is the first one. So there's no precedent in West Windsor when they were a tuition district. We had one in Wethersfield, and that was I think there was a Catholic school in Claremont, and there was the New England Classical Academy, the Heartland request, but no requests from Mount Scottney or West Windsor.
So there's never been anybody who wanted to go over to the Central Vermont Christian School in Queechee?
Not in my tenure, no. That's surprising too, but no.
Nancy, you have your hand up.
Yes, I wondered why we're voting if it were Heartland, or is each district voting for the SU?
No, this is a Mount Scottney request.
Yeah, this is a West Windsor family.
This is a West Windsor family.
And I went to the Kent school and asked them whether they considered themselves to be a religious school. And the person I talked to in the Office of Admissions said yes.
Oh, thank you. Last time I was trying to turn off my microphone and I turned off everything. I was off so I missed the explanation. Thank you.
Okay. I would hold off on a formal decision tonight. I think you do want to make a motion, but I would let Bill. I'm going to text him now because I think we're getting close to executive session. How close do you think we are, Elizabeth?
I think we're probably about 10 minutes away.
I'll tell him 8:25, 8:30. Is that good?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so then are there any other questions or comments about this matter at the moment? Hearing none, the next item on our agenda is 2 items which have been combined, which are innovation team / portrait of a graduate. I was thinking about trying to think over the past year since we're in December and thinking about what we've dropped and what we can pick back up in the next year, what's worth picking back up and what's not. I think we were forced to drop the innovation team because of really myriad reasons at the time. And it's kind of a good thing because it seemed to sort of coincide with where we were in Portrait of a Graduate. But taking a step back from the portrait itself, I think that the innovation team really, the idea of the innovation team and what to do with our two buildings, and also your beautiful presentation, the three of you, I think might be a good time to think about revisiting the innovation team and sort of adding in the extra layers of the Portrait of a Graduate and really thinking about, 5 years down the road. David, is there somebody who you can think of to get to moderate that, or should we go back to the drawing boards and ask around?
Yeah, well, that's where we got a little bit stuck last time, as we were looking for, somebody to facilitate that, and we had a couple of people that we reached out to, and they couldn't do it, and then COVID hit, so we just sort of stopped.
Right.
Look, I think it would be good to have somebody to facilitate that. I think the foundation that you saw laid tonight with that budget presentation does kind of set the stage for that kind of conversation. And so it's really a delicate balance of whether we just kind of try to find somebody to facilitate that now. Or
I think we need a facilitator. I really do think we need a facilitator. And we can get, now that we're all virtual, we can get somebody good who doesn't have to travel here. We can actually do it from here. And now that we know the ins and outs of how these virtual meetings work, we can have breakout sessions or breakout groups or whatever we need.
Yeah.
So we can manage to get somebody good to facilitate, I think.
So I would say, I know that,
they don't even have to be in the Northeast. They could be,
right.
Actually, they could be in California.
Right.
As far as that goes.
And I've got some thoughts about that. And I know that the administrative team, I think maybe we do a little brainstorming. We get back to you, Elizabeth, you think about it. And then, maybe we'll bring a couple of names to the next board meeting.
Okay. Amy, I see your hand.
Yes, I raised my hand again. And this gets back to what Jennifer was saying, that in many ways, our district administrators have been the innovation team.
Yeah, this time, yeah.
Instead of a group of people sitting in a room or on a screen talking about it, they're doing it. And that is so exciting. They are showing us that it can be done and that it will be done. So yay, thank you.
Excellent. Does anybody else have anything? Bill, I see your hand.
Yes. I think moving forward with the innovation team, especially hearing everything I've heard tonight, really looking at a much longer term plan. What can we help the administration? What can we help with the school to get to some point in 5-10 years? I think the administration team has really come up with a good direction for the next couple of years.
So are you and Amy both saying that we don't need the innovation team after all? Amy's saying no. Bill, are you saying no, we don't need it?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm basically saying that when we meet with when we meet as an innovation team, we can really begin to take a long-term view as the portrait of a graduate and the plans of the administration become as they play out, instead of looking, what are we going to do in the next 2 years to get to point B? We can start looking at, well, in the next couple of years, these changes within the district that the administration has planned, we'll let them play out. Where do we want to be in 5 or 10 years?
Right. That's what's really, really great.
Right. And that's kind of what I was saying too, is that instead of sitting at the table like we were a year ago and people saying, well, how's that going to work? Are you sure that's going to work? Well, I don't know. There was a lot of tension at that table in that room, and our district administrators have shown us that there's a lot that we can do when we work together and we take some chances and we say, if it doesn't work, we'll own up to it and we'll go at it in another direction. So they're showing us that we can do it. So thank you.
And I think what would be helpful is the only reason why I'm saying we just need a little bit more time. This is a new administrative team and they've obviously tackled this, incredibly well tonight. I think we just need a little time to process. It's not the same team we had when we were talking about that innovation team the last time, but I think it's so much of this is happening organically with staff members and with this team. But I think it would still be good to just kind of brainstorm what that next step would be to start looking long term. I think Bill's right. That's really what we want. Look at that strategic plan and say, okay, what can we do collaboratively over the next, say, 3 years? So I'd say let's keep it on the agenda and we'll bring some names back to you. I see Colleen's hand is up too.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you said, I think we should keep the brainstorming. I think in a classroom, brainstorming sessions are the best part. They're the fun part. They're the part where we get to really hear each other's perspective. So I would never want to lose any brainstorming sessions ever.
Excellent. Chris, did you take your hand down?
Yeah, it's down.
Okay. All right. So according to my agenda, I just heard the bloop of a comment. Hold on. Let's see what it is.
That might have been Bill raising his hand.
Oh, okay. Bill, you have another comment?
Speaking of brainstorming, the innovation team might be a good platform to also discuss, if we are going to innovate, how can we support it with the budget?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Even a long range plan on the budget. You're right, Bill.
Yep. Okay. A thing that is going to be on our next agenda. David, you have talked about this already, but we will have a member of the Windsor Select Board come and talk with us about the Dinah story and their vision for having it become part of a curriculum district-wide. I assume I sent her a number of questions for her to consider before bringing it to our board, and explained that we don't necessarily pick sources or topics for teachers. And so, yeah, so we'll have her come and
give us the background.
We'll have the innovation team, we'll have the budget.
Yeah, and yeah, always a COVID update, I think. Yeah, I think that's good. That's going to be plenty.
And also, should I try to bring Lisa back?
Well, I think that would, yeah, I think we need to get more specific around, yeah, I think that would not be a bad idea. Just kind of get specific around the direction we want to take with her. My question with Lisa was just more around, do we want to get, sort of the policy work in place first that we're doing with Jameson and Ariel?
Well, we've talked about that, and one possibility is for her to have a forum with us directed about what we talked about this evening. And then another possibility is to have her kind of grease the wheels on the implementation part of the policy.
Yeah.
But I see those as two totally different things, and I don't want to confuse them. They're kind of, they're related. They're definitely related, and that's why if we have somebody doing it, Lisa would be good for both, I think. But I think it needs to be, what she does with us needs to be fleshed out a little bit more. So
I agree.
Okay.
I think Bill's going to be signing on to Bill Ellis. I told him we're really close.
Okay. So with that, I'll take a motion to enter executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of entering executive session, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Are you going to approve the previous minutes at another time?
Oh, shoot. I'll do it after the executive session.
Okay. So,
Yeah. And I'll send you that, Wendy.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
so much, all y'all. You really did great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Have a good night.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.